Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. It is so exciting to do another webinar and talk to our wellness watchers. And happy Pride Month as well to those that celebrate. It's such a beautiful month, beautiful time for many different reasons, including even FIFA. There's so much going on, but it's always important to pay attention to your wellness. So we appreciate you for being here today. Whether you are attending live or watching the recorded version, we welcome you. For those that are coming for the first time, again, thank you for being here. And for those that are you're not new to this. You've been part of the community. You've been part of, being mindful of your wellness. Again, thank you for being consistent with yourself. My name is Cassandra Francis, and I am the founder as well as a clinic director and one of the registered psychotherapists at One Piece Therapy. And today we have the lovely Jaleesa Hay, who is a registered social worker as well as a psychotherapist, and she will be presenting on choosing yourself without guilt. That title in itself already stirs up something. Like, how can both coexist? So I look forward to hearing all the things that Jaleesa will speak about. And if you have any comments or any questions as we carry on, please use the chat function if you are attending live, or you can use the comment section if you're watching the recorded version, and we'll be in touch through there. And without further ado, I'll pass it to you, Dr. Seuss.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Cassandra. Everyone, just warning, I do have two screens, so in case I look away a little bit, I'm just making sure that everything is in order. So yeah, thank you all for being here today. Super excited for today's webinar. So yeah, as Cassandra mentioned, I am one of the registered social workers and psychotherapists here at One Piece. So yeah, if you like what you're hearing and you want to maybe speak to me a little bit more one-on-one, you do have that opportunity. But for sure, just today, we'll get through today's webinar, and yeah, we can get started by jumping into the agenda and doing a bit of a highlight on what we will be discussing today. So to start off, we'll do a little bit of intro, give you some insight on what might be helpful to have with you today for today's webinar. We'll talk about why choosing yourself can feel so difficult. Then we'll touch on burnout, how that might show up, discuss boundaries and identity. We'll also touch a little bit on values and how that can support the shift and change that you might be wanting to make in choosing yourself a little bit more, considering yourself even just period. And then we'll discuss self-compassion versus self-criticism. We'll end off with some tangible takeaways, as well as a bit of some reflection questions that I want you all to take back and have some time to sit with. So for today's webinar, if you could have maybe pen and paper, if you want to use your notes app on your phone, just have something with you to take some notes, to write down maybe some things that are helpful. Or if I do share with you questions that you can take back and reflect on, you will have some space to write those things down and come back to when you're ready. All right, so we can go through and get started and discuss why choosing yourself can feel so hard. So a big part of the struggle is that choosing yourself usually means giving up, even if it's something unhealthy or draining. That trade-off can feel like grief, not necessarily relief, especially when the familiar pattern has been to keep everyone comfortable. It can also feel hard when your identity is tied to being a person that's reliable, somebody who's caring, or even easy to depend on. If people have rewarded you in the past for giving up something that's important to you, for self-sacrificing, then implementing boundaries can feel like a sense of betrayal, even when they're actually healthy. People often feel fear of disappointing others, being seen as selfish, or even losing relationships when they start to prioritize themselves. Those reactions are definitely common because change can expose which connections were conditional or on you, sorry, conditional and necessarily overextending yourself, and maybe not unconditional the way that we would want dynamic and love and support to show up. Something to note is that a lot of times when we do change our behavior, when we start to do something a little bit different, and others are watching that shift happen, they can then have sometimes a burst of like negative response or negative energy towards you because they're so unfamiliar with like who this person is and how they're showing up. So it's something to note that like as you make this shift, as you consider yourself, as you prioritize yourself, that others might have a hard time with that. And that doesn't mean that you should stop. It's more so fuel to keep going and to show them that this is the new normal, that you care about your well-being, you care about the things that you need to live a fulfilling life, and they kind of have to, get with the program a little bit. So here you can see that there are a few things of where that guilt can actually show up and why that shows up. So putting yourself first can feel guilty because the pressure is rarely just personal. It's sometimes learned, and it's repeated over time. So this can be messages from family, productivity culture, gender or caregiver expectations. They can teach people that their value comes from being useful, available, and again, having that role of sacrificing yourself. So in terms of social expectations, those often reward people for being accommodating and then penalize those who are, quote, too self-centered. So that can create a double blind where you're expected to have needs, which we all do, but not inconvenience anyone with those needs. So when this gets internalized, guilt shows up as soon as you start to consider rest, boundaries, and even saying no. The guilt is often less about what you did and more about violating an invisible rule that you were taught to follow. So with productivity culture, that adds another layer by treating rest and limits as insufficiency. So when worth gets tied to your output, choosing yourself can feel like falling behind, being lazy, or even failing to maximize your potential. Your mindset turns basic human needs into moral problems. So instead of asking yourself, what do I need in this moment? You might start asking, am I doing enough? Which makes self-care feel undeserved. Family messages is a huge one, as family and culture can make the idea of putting others before yourself a way of showing love, duty, or even maturity. Sometimes we hear growing up something along the lines of good people put others first. And choosing yourself can feel like disobedience, actually, rather than self-respect. So those messages can essentially be strong in homes where caretaking was praised and personal needs were then minimized. In that environment, guilt becomes a learned alarm system, even when nothing is actually wrong. So I want you to take a second and think about, what messages did you receive growing up about putting others first? What did you hear your parents say to each other about maybe taking care of their parents? What did you hear them talking to people on the phone about in terms of having to drop everything and show up for this person, right? Some examples might be not to be selfish, that good people help others, that putting others' needs before your own is what we do in this family, that you have to work hard before you get to rest. So take a second to just think about if any of these things sound familiar to you, if any of them have maybe created a system that makes it difficult for you to consider yourself.
Thank you for already giving us a thought-provoking question to reflect on, because it's so important that we pay attention to who we're surrounded by, whether it is friends, family, culture, and how things of these messages can show up directly and indirectly, right? Sometimes no one is telling you put your sister before your needs, for example, your sibling before your needs. Sometimes you just see it being done and therefore you follow suit. But I love that you're also starting from the position of, the guilt is essentially external, right? Like when we want to meet our needs, it feels good. Like that intrinsically, internally, we're good to go. But externally is where we face, those different barriers that, as you said, can be internalized. And now here comes a domino effect. Thank you for already giving
Absolutely.
insight.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that that's going to be the theme overall, is that a lot of these things are not ones that we've created for ourselves. It's things that we see, things that we hear, and we're just trying our best to like show up and do what's possible. And then just gender and caregiver expectations as well. Like even as women, sometimes we're looked at as the person who has to be the primary caretaker, who has to take care of the house. And maybe for men, it's like you're the person that has to bring home the bacon. So all of these pressures can make it difficult to provide yourself the opportunity to just relax and rest. And, that idea of putting yourself first, it's not necessarily selfish, but it can feel like it. And then it becomes socially risky as well when it comes to all of these things that we just discussed in terms of where this pressure and where this guilt can be developed from. So just moving forward, self-care is not selfish. And they do kind of look similar on the surface, but where they differ is the intent and the impact. So self-care protects your well-being, while selfishness puts your comfort first in a way that disregards other people's needs. So a simple test to this is, does this choice restore you without harming others necessarily, or does it offload responsibility onto them? If it's restorative and respectful, it's self-care. And if it's careless or exploitive, it leans towards selfishness. So an example for this is, maybe you're going to an event with a friend after work during the week. So that means maybe you've been at work all day, maybe you've been to the gym, you're a little bit tired or a little bit exhausted, but you want to see this person. Selfishness would look like showing up late without apologizing or valuing that person's time, no communication. And self-care would be communicating your need to decompress and eat some dinner after work before going out to meet this person. So hopefully that can help for folks to understand a tangible idea on how selfishness and self-care can look different. So usually why they get confused is that people often call self-care selfish just point blank, because they're taught that good people always accommodate others. So that makes boundaries, rest, and saying no feel morally uncomfortable, even when it's healthy. Again, bringing in productivity culture, that tends to blur the lines as well, because people start treating rest as laziness and over functioning as virtue. So in that, taking care of yourself can feel like breaking an unspoken rule. So a way to reframe this is, putting yourself first is not the same as putting others beneath you. Healthy self-care is what helps you stay kind and sustainable instead of resentful or depleted. So as you can see there, just on the slide, providing you two different ways to look at how self-care and selfishness may show up. So what we do want to note here is that the cost of always putting yourself first can then equal burnout. So it's more than just feeling tired. It can show up as signs of emotional exhaustion, of racism, difficulty enjoying life, and even feeling disconnected from your own needs.
I do want to also take this opportunity to address something that you said, Jaleesa, in terms of intent and how intent really does shift how the outcome of the same action could be, right? Like a lot of time clients talk about the good and the bad of TV, for example. Like some people watch TV because they want to avoid whatever else they need to do, distract themselves, maybe even dissociate because they're dealing with different mental health concerns. Whereas some people do the same thing, right? In terms of they watch TV, but it's for decompressing, right? It's for self-care, as you're saying, or maybe watching a good show, a good movie. So, the act of watching TV isn't bad, but as you say, it's the intent behind what are we doing this action for, which shifts the whole narrative. So something like that.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And like, definitely something that we'll talk about a little bit later in terms of like self-care and we picture it to be and what it can actually be. And yeah, I love that point of a lot of the times things that we do, it's thinking about what is the role that this thing is playing in my life. Is it pulling me away from the things that are important, or is it bringing me closer to what I enjoy and what allows me to live a meaningful life. So yeah, we'll definitely talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, just to touch back on burnout. So emotional exhaustion can show up as feeling depleted, even after resting, like you have nothing left to give. Resentment often follows that when your time and energy keep going out with little care of coming back in. So kind of thinking about this as people who identify as introverts, and sometimes they need that time to recharge their social battery. They need time to be by themselves and just pour back into themselves in order to then maybe the following day be out with friends and enjoy that time. So it's kind of thinking about the fact that when we're not putting up boundaries, when we're not setting time for ourselves, that battery is slowly starting to deplete. And when we get to zero, that's when burnout is actually, before we even get to zero, that's when burnout starts to show up. And when we get to zero, we're deep in it. So making sure that you're kind of checking in with yourself on how you're feeling and when you need that time to just step back and be by yourself maybe for a bit. So cynicism can appear when helping starts to feel like pointless or one-sided, and you begin to emotionally start pulling back to protect yourself. Difficulty enjoying life is also common because chronic overgiving leaves little room for pleasure, curiosity, or even spontaneity to do things for ourselves. Feeling disconnected from your own needs is a major warning sign. When you're always scanning for what everyone else wants, your own preferences can become hard to hear at all. So this pattern often develops when self-worth gets tied to being useful, agreeable, or available. Over time, you can create a state of constant overextension where your nervous system never fully gets to stand down. So that can actually physically show up. Things like tension headaches, trouble with digestion, difficulty sleeping, change in eating habits. So you keep saying yes, but your body and emotions are saying no for you. So as you start to shift and change the way that you approach showing up for folks, that can start to, those alarm bells can be a little bit more clear, and you can use that as a warning sign to be like, okay, hey, I need to pause. I need to take a step back, and I need to reset and think about how I actually want to approach this. So to start, you can start by treating these signs as information again, and some useful things that you can help to have that reset and have that check-in is asking yourself, what am I doing out of care? What am I doing because I care and I love this person? What am I doing out of fear or guilt? Am I worried about what people are going to say or think about me? And what do I need to keep, or what do I need to do for myself that I keep postponing? Maybe it's a workout class. Maybe it's time with friends. Maybe it's time with family. Even small changes matter, like saying no once, taking and scheduling a break, or even just naming something that you need out loud. So I want us all, myself included, Cassandra, you too, we're going to do a bit of a neglect check-in. So I want you to take this moment to reflect on how often you may be neglecting yourself and your needs. So as I go through it, just think about if it applies or not. So you apologize for setting boundaries. You feel guilty about resting. You say yes when you really want to say no. You regularly feel emotionally exhausted. You prioritize other people's needs before considering your own, and you struggle to identify what you need. Take a second and just think about how that's felt to acknowledge and put attention towards some of these ways that you might not be showing up for yourself. And I want you to think about if you're ready to make change. Right? Without readiness, we can't really do too much, and it's okay if you're not ready, if you're worried, if you're scared. Hopefully, as we get through the rest of today's webinar, you might find some power, some excitement in making some of that change. But even just now in this moment, thinking about if that's something that you're ready for.
Thank you. Thank you for this check-in, Jaleesa. Part of me wants to slow this down because once you said my name, you called me, like, I'm like, okay, let me lock it in.
Yes.
Yeah. And honestly, after you read the list, part of me feels annoyed. And because some of this applies, and I'm trying to decide, okay, am I annoyed at myself for feeling guilty for resting, for example, or am I annoyed at whoever made me feel, whether, perceived or actual, that I can't rest in this moment and I have to perform? But annoyance is coming up, and maybe my therapist self is like, I'm ready to change that, because no. Yeah. But it is that follow-up question is also hard to answer, because yes, we can read this, we can identify, we can have feelings against it, but it's like, well, changing it, that's a big thing you're asking, especially if what triggers this response in us is coming from people that we can't necessarily let go in our lives, or positions that we can't necessarily just release ourselves from. How do we change it?
Yeah, and I think that is the biggest thing, is that change part is the hardest, right? Having to actively do something different is going to feel uncomfortable. And it's just, are you willing to sit in that discomfort for a little bit? Are you ready? And also knowing that, like, it can be small. These changes, this readiness for change, it can be done in small ways to build yourself, to build that capacity to do it in others. I hope everyone was thinking and reflecting as we were talking a little bit.
And also want to just insert here, we know, of course, this is a webinar, so we're presenting a lot of information. There might be questions that you have, comments you want to share in a one-on-one space. So please do reach out to us at One Piece Therapy to connect with Jaleesa and continue the conversation about your healing journey and choosing self without guilt. To access our information, it will be at the end of the presentation, but also we're communicating in the chat, so feel free to use whatever is convenient for you.
All right. Boundaries. We've been talking about it a lot, so let's sit with that for a little bit. So the definition here is that boundaries are limits that we set to protect our time, energy, values, and well-being. Boundaries are not punishments or putting up walls or attempting to control others, but they're a way for us to communicate, to have self-respect and clarity. So an example of this is a boundary wouldn't be to tell somebody, hey, don't text me after 9 p.m., right? Because now we're trying to control others' behaviors. But what a boundary in that sense would be is, if you text me after 9 p.m., I won't be responding. Right? So hopefully that can provide an understanding of the difference and how those two things, or how to communicate your boundaries to other people. So we're going to touch on boundaries and identity, and how that's important. So boundaries can help you to separate your needs, values, and responsibilities from everyone else's. That separation is a big part of identity, because it lets you know where you end and other people begin. Why boundaries matter is that they help you to stay connected to your own needs. And when you constantly adjust yourself to keep them comfortable, you can lose touch with what is important to you. So practicing self-care without guilt is taking care of yourself That then becomes easier when your boundaries are clear, because you're not constantly overextending yourself to meet everyone else's demands. Healthy boundaries reduce stress and help prevent burnout, which support both mental health and better relationships. Boundaries are not just limits, but they're ways of saying, this is me. They support identity by giving you room to think, to choose, and to act in ways that are consistent with who you are, rather than just what other people expect of you. That's why boundaries can feel uncomfortable at first. If you've been used to merging with other people's needs, setting a boundary can feel like selfishness, when it's often, again, just self-respect. So for example, here you can see on the screen, I've highlighted a question for you to just reflect on. So when I say yes to everything, I lose touch with, and there are a few examples here. We have your values, your relationship, your authenticity, taking up space, or even honoring your identity. So example of that could be, when I say yes to everything, I lose track of my values. Lately, health has been an important value for me. It allows me to show up to the gym and take care of my physical health. And the gym also supports my mental health. If I continue making plans on Thursday, I won't be able to attend my Pilates class. A simple way to think about it is that if self-care is what you do for others, and boundaries are what protect you so that self-care can actually happen. So as we take a moment to transition from this to talking about self-compassion and self-criticism, I want you to think about what is important to you. What is setting these boundaries going to provide for you?
Thank you, Jaleesa. I just wanted to say a quick comment here as well, because it's so interesting pairing boundaries and identity together, because I think that also highlights why it can be challenging to set boundaries for people sometimes, is
Right.
because it's not necessarily just the language we use or the act of setting a boundary in general, but the fact that it's about you and your identity is that's a big thing, and it really does get that deep. And therefore when we're exploring something in depth, it can come with different challenges. So I just wanted to honor, you're giving the right questions, and the tools and techniques are coming as you speak. But I also just want to highlight that if it's hard for you, our viewers, it makes sense, is what I wanted to say.
Yeah, for sure. Change is hard, right? So any change in any capacity is going to be difficult, and knowing that, like, you don't have to do it by yourself, that there is support, that there is way to gain the courage and the strength to make these shifts and changes. So moving forward with self-compassion and self-criticism, they both try to help you improve, but they work in opposite ways. So self-criticism uses harsh punishment to push you, while self-compassion uses kindness and curiosity to help you recover, learn, and grow. So self-criticism activates your stress response. So it raises your cortisol and makes it harder to think clearly, solve problems, or even stay motivated. It can also increase shame, rumination, which is the habit of endlessly dwelling on negative thoughts, past mistakes, or distressing feelings, and can cause depression over time. Self-compassion activates your parasympathetic nervous system, which is the rest and digest branch of our automatic nervous system, and it operates automatically to calm your body after periods of stress or danger. It lowers your heart rate, and it stimulates essential daily processing, such as energy conservation. This helps create the emotional safety needed to recover, take responsibility, and try again. Research shows people with higher self-compassion are more resilient, have more accurate self-perception, and persist longer after a setback. Many people believe self-criticism is a fuel for growth, and self-compassion will make them soft or complacent. Studies actually show the opposite. Self-compassionate people set higher standards and are more motivated to improve because they care about their well-being, not because they fear failure. So we're going to do a bit of an activity. I want you to call a situation to your mind and see, actually feel the stress and emotional discomfort in your body. So think about this moment, bring it to your mind. And now you're going to say to yourself something along the lines of, this is a moment of suffering. And this is practicing mindfulness, being present in the moment, understanding and noticing what it is that you're feeling. Other things might be as simple as, this hurts. Ouch. Identifying that this is stress, that this is overwhelm. The next part is, all of us experience hardships and difficulties. That other people feel this way too. That you're not alone in this emotion. That we all experience struggle and difficulty in our lives. If it's helpful to you, you can put your hand over your heart, feel the warmth of your hands and the gentle touch of your hands on your chest, or whatever soothing technique or response feels good to you. Maybe that's rubbing your legs. Maybe that's holding your hands. Maybe that's providing yourself a hug. Whatever feels right to you. And then lastly, be kind to yourself. What do I need to hear right now to express kindness to myself? Do what feels right. Some examples can be, I forgive myself. Reminding yourself that you're strong and you're patient. That you want to learn to accept yourself for who you are and how you show up. This practice can be used anytime, at any point, to help you build that self-compassion.
Thank you, Julissa. I also wanted to insert here, for those that maybe you have a different pace, a different tempo of going through these exercises, we will be posting this webinar on our YouTube channel, and you can always go back and watch it and do things at your pace. Or again, you can also book with Julissa. Maybe what she is giving a general example doesn't apply to you for that, because even as you're speaking, Julissa, my mind is going in so many different places.
Yeah.
That I'm like, okay, I don't know if I'm ready to do that or this, you know. So, I just want to insert there. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And I know it's so hard in a webinar to like hold space for things that are hard to, like it's a fast-paced environment. We're going for only an hour. So yeah, definitely watch it at half speed if you need to. Do whatever feels right to you to be able to practice this and to create the systems and the change that you want. All right, so moving forward into values. So there is a therapeutic modality called acceptance and commitment therapy. I'll be referring to it as ACT. And it highlights that values are your inner compass. It provides deeper motivations that guide you in how you want to live, love, work, and grow. They're not necessarily rules or goals, but they're qualities that you choose to embody, like courage, kindness, health, or autonomy. And you can also see there on the slides, there's a few other examples. At the end of it all, you get to choose the ones that feel the best for you. So ACT helps you to move from fear-based thinking to values-based choosing. So instead of asking, what's the safest choice? You ask yourself, which option will move me closer to my values, even if it's uncomfortable? When it comes to putting yourself first, you can use your values as a filter. So thinking about, does saying yes to this move me towards or away from my core values? If it's an away movement, that would be towards depletion, resentment, a loss of self. Saying no becomes easier, not out of selfishness, but out of integrity. So ACT can help you to reframe your decision-making from which outcome feels the safest to which difficulty feels worth it. Which thoughts, feelings am I willing to have to move forward into the life that I want? So how values support motivation is that it defines direction, which gives you the motivation when things can get hard and difficult. You're willing to make room for feelings like anxiety, guilt, discomfort, because your values, which could be things like being healthy, being authentic, living your life, is more important than the temporary comfort. So discuss how like thinking about how implementing boundaries and knowing that that's going to feel uncomfortable. But if that is moving you towards living a life that is important to you, living a life where you're in charge, where you get to make your decisions, then maybe it's worth it to have that moment of discomfort. So research also shows that spending time with considering your values can help you to cope better with stress. It can lower your cortisol, which is the stress hormone. It can increase motivation for activities that align with what you value. And it can help you to stick with change when you start to feel uncomfortable because you're connected to purpose. So we're doing a lot of activities today. So again, this is something that you can come back to and you can review and slow down and take some time to really think and consider. But a simple way to process, let's say, for example, to how to put yourself first, you're going to name your values. Is it health? Is it self-respect? Is it honesty? Is it connection? Then you're going to check in on that choice. Thinking about decisions like lending money to family or having to work late again. Asking yourself, does this move me towards or away from my value? Accepting the fact that you will feel uncomfortable. So taking time to notice thoughts like I'm selfish, or I feel guilt, I feel anxious, I feel scared. And instead of fighting those feelings, making room for them. I'm feeling this feeling and I'm still choosing to move forward because it aligns with my values. And then taking committed action. So maybe that means you're saying no to a request that might be made. Maybe you're reminding yourself that you will take a real break this week, that you will set a boundary around money. So you can track your alignment by, or more so tracking your alignment instead of your mood. So not necessarily how you're feeling, but like, okay, I've did this hard thing. I've said no to this person that I usually always say yes to, and I'm feeling a little bit like uncomfortable. That was really hard for me. But now that I've sat with that, I feel good about this decision. I feel good that now I'm taking my time back and I'm letting this person know that I'll be there for them, but I also have to consider myself and my needs. So hopefully that can help folks to better understand how to implement values, and that's like, for example, if your value, is self-respect or health, reminding yourself that lending money right now would move me away from my value of self-respect. I'm willing to feel the feelings of guilt and say no because living my own life is more important than avoiding that discomfort. The values-based choosing is not the right outcome or thinking about what the right outcome would be, but it's about being the kind of person who honors their own needs. So that's why it's really important to take some time to sit with, review values. If helpful, when we post this, we can add a link. It's a list of almost 400 values. Yes, overwhelming. However, I feel like it allows people, one, to learn new words, because there's even words on there that I don't even know, but I find it helpful because when you even think about the words like, oh, what are your values? That's a hard decision to make. There's so many out there, and sometimes we don't even understand what that word values means. So I like to use that resource with clients to give them some time to think and to sit and to research if it's helpful to better identify what your core values are. So ACT doesn't remove the discomfort from putting yourself first, but it just gives you a reason to move forward. So now we're going to do some tools that you can utilize when you're wanting to choose yourself first. So tool one will be the pause. So before you say yes, or you want to consider something to do you actually want to do this thing? Right? Do you have capacity to do this thing? And what will this cost you? And that doesn't necessarily mean just financially, but like, is it going to cost you your health? Is it going to cost you your well-being? Is it going to cost you time that you have already set aside with your family or yourself? So taking a moment to pause, knowing that you don't have to make a decision right away. And that kind of moves us into tool two, which is maybe creating a bit of a script. So preparing yourself. I like to say, like, sometimes when we want to do something that's hard, we think that we just have to like go with it and hope for the best. You can have a plan. You can take some time and set out parameters and create a script to help you to reinforce this plan that you want to engage in. So maybe saying something like, I'm unable to commit to that right now. Let me check my schedule. I'm gonna have to think, right? Oh, I think I have something planned that weekend. Like, can I get back to you? I need some time to think about that. Or even just flat out, actually, that's not gonna work for me, right? And lastly, with the third tool is to have a self-compassion break, knowing I'm going to do something difficult, and after that difficult thing, I'm going to need some time to just be by myself and, uplift myself and provide myself the compassion that I need so that I can do this thing again. So again, it's not kind of like the activity that we did before, reminding yourself this is a difficult moment. That difficulty is part of being a human, and that you're going to be kind to yourself now. So that means maybe scheduling some self-care post having this difficult talk with a friend, making sure that you've outlined time to sit down and to do something that feels good to you, so that you kind of create this system of like, okay, when I do something hard, I know that I can still pour into myself and remind myself of why this is so important. Okay. So
A quick question, Jaleesa.
yes.
Um, how would you say all of these tools can be used in one situation?
Yeah, so like a bit of an example.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so thinking about if somebody were to reach out to you for maybe an event, maybe they're throwing something, and they're really excited for you to come, and they just hit send on the text and it's a flyer to their event, but that event is actually happening the same weekend as maybe like Father's Day and your cousin's birthday, right? So there's gonna be a lot going on. A lot of things are gonna be moving. And maybe initially you're very used to, okay, yeah, I'll be there, right? As soon as that text comes through, you feel pressure, you feel your heart racing, you start to sweat, and you're just like, I don't want to think about this anymore. This is so overwhelming. I'm just gonna say yes. And then what happens is that we fast forward to that weekend, and now you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you don't have enough outfits for the weekend. You feel like you don't have enough time to just be by yourself. You still have to go to work on Monday, right? All these things are starting to like creep up on you as that time is coming up. So to practice, choosing yourself, you might think to yourself, do I actually want to be at this event? Right? Is this a group of people, or is this person really important to me that like I'm willing to like push past some of these emotions and feelings that I might have to be there for them? Or would I feel better about maybe providing them an alternative like hangout, right? Do I have capacity to show up to this when I already have two other locked in events for that weekend? And then when you give yourself that time to think, maybe it's not enough, maybe you're still unsure of what you want to do, and you could be candid and honest and say, hey, like, I know I have a lot of things going on that weekend. Let me see the logistics. Let me see how that actually might work with me, and I will get back to you. So that gives you time to sit, to breathe, and to really look at what are your options. Is it actually possible for you to go, but maybe you just can't be there the whole time? Is it actually too much on your plate and you know that you're going to be overwhelmed? And maybe, again, like I mentioned before, you might want to suggest an alternative plan with this person. And then after making a decision, maybe you're like, yeah, it's going to be too much. Hey, I really appreciate the invite. I think I'm going to have to miss your event, but I would love for us to hang out, and maybe we can do lunch the following week, right? And after you've shared that information, after you've decided on what you wanted to do and you move forward, sitting with that, how did that feel? Checking in with yourself, right? How did that feel? Thinking about, okay, my values are authenticity and me being open and vulnerable about the fact that I am really busy that weekend was that actually felt really good to me. It was scary and it was hard, but the fact that the person responded, like they totally understood and that they're excited for us to have lunch, that feels really good to me. And I'm willing to do that again. So hopefully that was a good example.
Yes, it
Okay.
was very thorough. Thank you, Julissa.
Beautiful. All y'all can try that when you're even just make the hypothetical out and see like what your steps would be so that the actual next time it comes up, you kind of know what to do. Yeah, so to just touch on self-care, I know when we think about self-care, a lot of these things pop into our heads: spa day, bubble bath, vacations, right? All these things are very, it's a lot, right? We cannot provide these things for ourselves every single day. I mean, having a bubble bath every single day sounds great, but like sometimes there's just a lot going on and we don't have time to even fill that tub. So I wanted to highlight on this slide that self-care can also look like saying no, setting a boundary, going to bed on time, sticking to the routine and schedule that you set for yourself, because you know that you feel good when you do it, leaving an unhealthy situation or an unhealthy relationship, asking for support or help. And I know that for a lot of us, that can be really hard, but it's important that we use our community, we use the people that show up for us, and we extend out help when we need it, right? Taking breaks, scheduling breaks, even scheduling joy. So it's important that you kind of think about what does self-care mean to you, and what are the things that maybe you're actually already doing or that you want to do a little bit more. So for me, some things that are self-care are listening to an audiobook or reading, going to the gym, watching a TV show with my partner or my best friend, playing with my cat, baking, or even just going for a walk. So I know what I sometimes suggest to clients is like make a list of these things, have them somewhere. So when you start to feel overwhelmed, when you notice, hey, I don't think I've been taking care of myself, I need to do something for me. You take out the guessing, you take out the thinking, you take out the processing, and you look at that list that you've already created and you pick something. Pick what you feel like you have capacity for, and kind of do that for that evening and see how that feels for you. And remembering that self-care is not a reward, but it's a requirement. It allows us to show up for ourselves, to show up for others. And it's important. It's an important part of our routines that we need to kind of make a little bit more second nature. All right. So before we wrap up and end off for today, I wanted to leave you all with a bit of an action plan. So kind of a guided journal entry, if you will. So I have a few questions here that I would like all to write down, or if you're watching, you can pause this and either verbally respond or write your responses down. But I want you to think about one thing that you're going to stop doing. So maybe it's, I'm going to stop picking up my phone as soon as it goes off. I'm going to give it time to marinate and set, and like not create this stress response every time I hear it go off. Right? Then I want you to think about one thing that you're going to start doing. So maybe it's, I'm going to start going to bed on time. I'm going to start, or kind of stop, watching TV in bed. I'm going to start scheduling breaks. I'm going to start taking care of I'm going to get back into my skincare routine. And lastly, I want you to think about one boundary that you're going to practice this week. Just one. And it doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to be, I'm telling my parents no tonight. Okay, that's a jump. That might be a lot. But maybe your one boundary is that you're going to stop responding to your messages after 9 p.m. And I want you to get as specific as you can. I know it can be easy to be general, but again, without that plan, we're not really focused on what we're moving forward with. So get as specific as possible to help guide you in this change that you're trying to make. And this is something that you can do honestly on a weekly basis if it's helpful, right? Checking in at the end of the week or before you start the week, which I guess technically could be the same thing. But yeah, just thinking about one thing you're going to start, one thing you're going to stop, and a boundary that you want to set. And maybe that boundary is the same one for a month because you're really working at it and you're focused on how you want this to become second nature. So giving yourself some time to build up, again, capacity to do these things automatically versus like having to sit and think and process and all those kind of things. So I hope that these questions can help you all to just check in with yourself and think about some of these intentional changes that you're wanting to make.
Absolutely. It's doing that for me. I can tell you, I can tell you that, but just thinking about even something to start.
Yeah.
And what comes to my mind, just being a bit vulnerable here, is really revisiting my values, because I think even that's important. We can have our values and we think that's just what it is. That's just what's always going to be. We're not questioning it. We know that's what we said 10 years ago. Why would it change now, right? But no, I think even that needs to be revisited. And even if it is the same, it could look different in each season, right? So thank you, Jaleesa.
Absolutely. And I love that you mentioned that, because that is something that I always highlight to clients as well. Because I feel like when you ask that first question of like, okay, what are your values? And they take time and they think about it. And then they're like, oh my gosh, but like, what if in 10 years or in 5 years or next month, like I want it to change? It's your life. You're allowed to do those things, but thinking about before you make that change, why? Why does this value no longer serve you? And why are you thinking that this one aligns more with the life that you're trying to live? So again, like that conversation that we had earlier, intention is everything. So really sitting with why you're making these choices and why you're choosing these values can be helpful when you're reassessing. All right. So to wrap up, just wanted to highlight some key takeaways in case you can't remember anything. And these are the highlights. So start with choosing yourself, or reminding yourself that choosing yourself is not selfish. That boundaries protect your well-being. That self-compassion is a skill and not a personality trait. So just like I've been mentioning with a lot of things, is that you have to build this capacity. You have to work up to it. You can't leave this session and just be like, yeah, this is me, this is what I'm doing, without any work behind it. Right? So giving yourself time to build these skills and for them, again, to become a little bit more second nature. That sustainable care allows us to show up more fully for ourselves and for others. And finally, guilt is often a signal that you're breaking an old pattern, not that you're doing something wrong. So even bringing forth your values in those moments and reminding yourself of why you're doing this work, why you're doing something that feels so uncomfortable. Why is this important to you? And yeah, just kind of constantly showing up for yourself. And I hope that everyone today is feeling a little bit more courageous in making some changes in their life, to put themselves first, to consider themselves at all. And again, like Cassandra has been mentioning, if you're looking to have a more one-on-one support with figuring that out, then you can see on the screen and how you can get in contact with us. Our Instagram link is there. You can also book with myself or any other psychotherapist. And yeah, I look forward to either meeting some of you in the near future, or just I hope that you're leaving today feeling a little bit different about how to choose yourself without guilt.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Jaleesa. It's been a pleasure spending this hour with you and the audience. We know we had conversations going in the chat, and I know people are definitely taking away, whether it's a message or an activity or even a thought that you left behind and you're picking up, or a new thought to really sit with. I'm sure everyone is taking something away from today. And as you nicely put it, actually, even before I say that, even me, what I'm taking away is what is important to you. I think that at the end of the day, that's the question to ask. Like, what is actually important to you? And therefore, pursue that, right? Guilt is an emotion. It's not a state. It's not meant to be a state of being. It's not meant to be an outcome. It's just part of the process. So I really do appreciate our conversation. And again, as you nicely shared, here's our information. Please scan the QR codes, whether you're interested in booking with Jaleesa or another practitioner, but Jaleesa is really great and ready to support you. As well as you can follow us on Instagram. And once you go to our Instagram, you will see our YouTube link and other social media platforms. So you can subscribe and continue to be up to date on your wellness, as we do host webinars on a monthly basis. But all in all, we appreciate your time today and for ultimately taking care of yourself, right? And we'll see you another date, everyone.
Yes. Bye, everyone.
Bye. Good care.
Okay.